In this short video, I will be covering 16.1 and 16.2 in the IGCSE Biology syllabus, asexual and sexual reproduction. It's just a short PowerPoint with speak for my class at Army School College. Any mistakes here are mine and mine alone, and all this is free for use for anyone. So, reproduction is one of the key issues here in biology. And basically, if your DNA doesn't make it onto the next generation, you have more or less failed. I know there are exceptions. Ants and other social insects are different. But from a general point of view, reproduction is extremely important. And as we'll talk about later, it's also one of the driving forces behind evolution. The basic point here is that we're going to talk here about both sexual and asexual reproduction. And in both cases, it's all about the chromosomes you get from your parent or from your parents. These chromosomes then decide your genotype, and your genotype will have a huge effect on your phenotype. So in asexual reproduction, we only have one partner. There will be no recombination of DNA from the father and the mother. You only get the DNA or the chromosomes from the one parent. There are advantages and disadvantages to this. The biggest gain from doing asexual reproduction is it's fast and use less energy. You don't have to spend energy doing mating rituals. You don't have to spend energy going around looking for a partner. So you save energy. Also, you don't have the trouble of looking for a partner. Now, in some environments, it might be hard to find a partner. There might be a long distance between potential partners, so looking for a partner might be a huge waste of time if you can't find one. You also don't risk getting a bad DNA from your partner, which would make your offspring less viable or less adapted to the environment. So all in all, asexual reproduction is fast, it's efficient, it uses less energy, but it also results in the offspring having less variance. So if you're adapted to the environment, well, in that case, asexual reproduction works well as long as the environment doesn't change. But there can be a lot of instances where sexual reproduction with its greater variance would be an advantage. Some species are able to change between asexual and sexual reproduction depending on how the circumstances is and the environment. But some organisms do quite well with only asexual reproduction. Sexual reproduction explains a lot what we see in the animal kingdom. For example, why some male birds are way better looking than the female birds. And that is, of course, to attract the attention of the female and show that you are a viable and suitable partner for sexual reproduction. In sexual reproduction, both parents produce a gamete that only have half of the chromosomes of the parent cell. And that is, of course, smart, so when those two form together, you get the amount of chromosomes you need to have viable offspring. Sperm and eggs are an example of this, so is pollen. And if you have a successful sexual reproduction, these two gametes will fuse together to form a zygote, and in that recombine the parent's DNA to make a new offspring that is different from both the mother and the father. So sexual reproduction is all about finding that new DNA you can recombine with to make a even better or better adapted offspring to the environment. In sexual reproduction, the offspring will be different from both parents, although it will have a mixture of the DNA, and this will lead to a much larger variance of the offspring. And if we are in an environment that is changing or fluctuating, being different from your parents might give you a huge evolutionary advantage, as you now will be better adapted to the changing environment. This makes the process of adaptation to the environment more efficient, but it can also be a lot of work. Some animals use a lot of energy and a lot of time for the mating rituals, And in many animals, especially in mammals and birds, we often see that it's female choice who to mate with. I know there are exceptions, but it's often female choice, which makes sense since the female, most of the time, have to invest way more energy in the offspring than the male. So she has to make sure that the DNA she uses to recombine and mix with her is the best possible DNA she can get. And therefore, the male's putting up a display, the male peacock showing off, is a way of showing that his genetics are good and strong and that he will give rise to viable offspring. So 2 words we need to know as we move on in this part of the syllabus is diploid and haploid. All our normal cells are diploid, which means there are 2 sets of the chromosomes. But in the sex cells, we only have half the number haploid. So we only get half the chromosomes. In sex reproduction, 2 haploid gametes, they then form a diploid zygote. So you go from having half your chromosomes from the father, half the chromosomes from the mother, to recombine to yet again give you the full number of chromosomes to have, a fully functional organism. All this about chromosomes and gametes and haploid and diploid might sound confusing, but as we work further on the Cambridge syllabus, it'll all make sense. Just tag along.